Thank you, I'm delighted to be here and completely topical subject. And I was asked just to reflect, I guess, on the extent to which flexible working is or isn't improving the way we work, and how fundamentally can we create sustainable, inclusive, flexible working going forward, I guess, learning some of the lessons from the last couple of years. Just briefly, by way of introduction, Timewise is a social business. We have been around for about 15 years, so looking at flexible working, both for pandemic-induced hybrid working. We work to create a better functioning labour market. Probably the most relevant thing that we do in this context is work with businesses every day. So we provide consultancy services to firms who, for lots of different reasons, want to get better flexible work. Our clients range from Google to Tesco to the government of Jersey. And they work with us because for them, flexible working means being able to attract and retain great and diverse talent. It means hopefully being able to ensure that those people are able to do their best work in their best way, subject to whether it's where they work, when they work, or how much they work in the process of flexible working. And they want to make sure that they are able to provide a healthy workplace so that people can look after their well-being and balance work, whatever else is happening in their lives. I just thought I would start the discussion by sort of a couple of reflections on what we think good looks like in the context of flexibility, both in the context of having worked with lots of businesses and also lots of individuals. I should say we also own a job site, and we represent about 100,000 people on our books who are all looking for good, flexible work. So good for us, for our businesses. First thing for employers, we think it's about how you design work in a way that maximises business performance, but also enables people fundamentally to have some input, some autonomy, and some control over how much, when, or where they work. So the ideal scenario is that sweet spot between what works for business and what works for individuals. You could argue that's very simple to achieve, but actually we all know it's not. Secondly, we think good flexible work is about making sure that flexibility is available through the employee life cycle. So from day one in a job through to being able to negotiate flexibility as part of life changes, through to being able to progress and fundamentally take that flexibility with you. We know that if we think about part-time work, for example, the challenge at the moment is a significant number of people working part-time jobs, but they compromise pay quality. So only 1 in 10 job vacancies at the moment are advertised as part-time, and the majority of those are in the local. So we need flexibility to be available to everybody, irrespective of job role and irrespective of also the sector that you are in, which is my third point, that we think good flexible work
recording in progress
and consistent for all.
Our next speaker is incredibly well qualified. Professor Abigail Marks is Professor of Future and Work at Newcastle University Business School, and she's currently the Principal Investigator of a large ERC funded project looking at home working responses to COVID-19.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll write the CV next time.
Yeah, please, Abigail. So really what I'm going to talk about is broadly findings about flexible models, including working from home, based on the ESRC research project, which my colleague Stanley here was also involved in the project. So really the insights I have and the any advice I have is based on hybrid working and flexible models that include home working. I was asked to look at 3 main areas. The first is the main challenges workers and employees face when rapidly adapting to home work, obviously precipitated by the pandemic. I'm obviously going to exclude issues such as childcare at the start of the pandemic, because whilst this is a long-term effect, in terms of women, it doesn't have the more general impact of home working. One of the biggest factors that determined how successful home working was in terms of adaptation to new technology, not in terms of just learning practices, but also the impact on the working day. What we found 2 key things: work intensification and work extensification, both of which happened during the pandemic and have been going on post-pandemic. And this is partly due to the issue of these things such as being online teams, Zoom, etc. all the time. So there's been an increase in the rate of physical and mental input to work tasks, so work intensification, also the extension of working day, well beyond 8 hours. Many people got home working. It took back to technology itself. There was variable support at the start of the pandemic in terms of adaptation to new technology and new working practices. There was some pretty poor support in terms of support for home office equipment. We found people sitting in the garage working on their ironing boards. That improved as time went on, but in terms of longer term learning, in terms of basic health and safety, and ergonomics and office equipment, employees need to start taking responsibility. There's also things that we didn't think about in the pandemic, but have become custom and practice, that is using one's own mobile phone, using one's own home broadband, which needs to be thought about in terms of the employer's responsibility for this, because we all have things like Microsoft Authenticator popping up on our own mobile phones, colleagues phoning us on our own mobile phones. So both in terms of privacy and intrusion and invasion, these things need to be thought about. But what the pandemic did, thank goodness, was finally prompted the technological scaffolding and social awareness that was actually necessary for a medium proportion of the workforce to accomplish their work flexibly and often in a more productive manner than they could in the office. We think there are 8 issues or interrelated issues that need to be taken into consideration in terms of any hybrid working models. Office space in the actual employer's office space needs to be reconfigured to be more conducive to collaborative working and social interaction, and collaborative working spaces need to be centre of any organisation's plan for hybrid working. As I said before, organisations need to ensure home working space is safe and conducive to performance modelling, including office equipment. In terms of working rhythms, designing hybrid ratios is one of the most challenging aspects of moving to a permanent hybrid model. Reconciling the call for clear organisational messaging about office present expectations with the needs and preferences of a diverse workforce. So really clear need for job analysis as corporate transition to hybrid working, as we need to clearly understand the time and place constraints of tasks that require people to be on site at particular times, and there needs to be increased experimentation with hybrid ratios. Although we think this should be less about a numerical ambition and more about finding a balance that's successful for both employees and employers. Information technology. This goes on to mean that the right to disconnect. Employees feel like because their technology is in their house, their household often is no longer a place of leisure, and they need to be online and available all the time. Because technology is the modern form of managerial control, is based on the presence and visibility of employees. People want to look like they're being productive. We've got to be really careful about the data that is collected by this technology. Fairness and inclusion, there needs to be clarity of opportunity for people who are mostly or entirely home-based and those more regularly within the office. Practical activities to ensure every meeting is an inclusive hybrid meeting with a video dialing opportunity led by a chair that doesn't necessarily need to be in the office and who is skilled in ensuring everybody contributes. It's really, really challenging, as we know here. It's something that we're all going to have to learn to work with. Employees need to have high level involvement in terms of their own ways of working, takes into account their needs and organisational needs, and takes into account flexibility. Line manager capability, it really needs to be developed. They play a pivotal role in new corporate strategies for hybrid and flexible working. It's a different set of skills that they need managing hybrid teams than they did previously. So they need to be thought about. We also really think about younger and early career staff because they need to benefit from the in-person contact, network building, and experiential learning. So that's another thing that's really hard balancing act to make. Really good frequent personal communication by leaders is essential during the pandemic, and it will be essential into any new working practices, checking regularly with employees, critical surveys, etc. Communication should continue with moving towards hybrid working. Hybrid working has important consequences for regulatory space, as everybody knows. There's inevitable change of contractual or legal requirements between employers and employees, possible impact on career progression for existing already marginally active group who may be more likely to take up hybrid or home working, and it raises concerns about career penalties when you're working from home. Final thing I was asked for information was gender equality, impacting gender equality when it comes to flexible working. And again, most of this is related to hybrid or home working. Before the pandemic, when women spent 6 hours more than men a week on unpaid childcare, and this has increased to 7.7 hours after lockdown. And from our own research, we found increasing inequalities in domestic work provided inside the home. This has massive consequences when the income status and professional accomplishments are achieved outside the home. Since the pandemic began, women in the UK have been 1.5 times more likely to have to leave their job or downshift their jobs compared to their male colleagues due to overburden. For example, in academia, which obviously is close to home for me, men have been able to publish more papers on average than they did prior to the pandemic, while women's research outputs have taken a massive hit. And therefore, there's a real threat to advancement in equality. Obviously, organisations and government are really limited in what they can do in terms of people's home lives. It's not possible to legislate how couples share chores and childcare at home, but organisations can avoid rewarding overwork, people working over working time, ensure the right to disconnect, and discourage intensification and extensification.
Our next speaker is Cheney Hamilton. Cheney is founder and CEO of the Find Your Flex Network, which works closely with businesses to help them implement flexible working policies, address gender pay gaps, and enable equality and access to the workplace for everyone. Cheney advocates on the need for careers with hashtag FlexAppeal and encourages true flexibility, not just standardized hours.
So I've been asked today to talk specifically about outcome-based working and if that's the ground zero model for flexible working. I agree it is, and not only for flexible workers, but also for organisations too. So I'm happy to share my research and my work from the last few years around that. We then push our thought out further, not just on the platform itself, but right across the social media landscape, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the places that you can find us. And we found that when we asked the question, what type of flexible working are you seeking, that 65% of our network wanted outcome-based working. They did not want time or location-based flexibility. When you add that to the volume of women who fell out of PAYE roles and the amount of contractors, freelancers that we see now increasing back up again towards 5 million at the last sort of count that came out earlier this year, we're seeing a really decisive move away from time and location-based flexibility. People are leaving PAYE roles because they're only being offered gimmicks like 4-day week or hybrid or ways that aren't really truly flexible, because really the only true way to get flexibility is to look at outcome. Freelance and contract work provides outcome-based working. That's the biggest part about contracting, that people get the true flexibility they need, because they are delivering what businesses need, they're not the one see. So they can deliver that need in the time that's agreed between the two parties, and it'll be delivered exactly how the company wants and how the person wants. And if that takes them 1 day a week to deliver, brilliant. If it means that they work 5 days a week, but from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., and that's how they want to work, that's how they do it. None of that comes into the narrative. Businesses don't need to do that. All they need to do know is that their business needs are going to be delivered by their people. So that's kind of the case for the people. We then looked at what the case is for businesses, and 2 things for us that COVID really highlighted was that 1, government are not going to be able to bail us out again. Businesses will not be bailed out again, people will not be bailed out again, and there will be another COVID. 2, due to the prevalence and the uptake of furlough, UK businesses, organisationally, their models aren't too fixed. And we really needed to look at how we could help them become more agile, or to find some flexibility organisationally rather than sticking to old fixed models where overhead is happening. So we looked for a partner in Law Research, which are a British tech-based company here in London, and they introduced us to Mutable, which is an organisational structure that basically allows businesses to remain in the constant state of reinvention versus short-term thinking or knee-jerk digital transformation programs that really leads us down that route to automation, which is essentially, the government found recently that 10 million jobs are under threat over the next 10 years due to automation. We're seeing a rise, and McKinsey let out a report recently around the rise of decentralised and autonomous organisations, which are very much automation driven. And the problem with automation is that it's not looking at the people, it's not looking at its workers to deliver the flexibility, it is automated. So we're then putting more pressure onto the benefit system, where more people are falling out of work, and there is just not the input from the Department of Education or from government to help reskill and retrain people into more sustainable careers. And I do think that every single job that is highlighted on job boards now shouldn't just be listed as an outcome-based opportunity, but also as to whether or not it's sustainable and is it actually going to be here in the next 2, 3, 4 years' time. There's a bigger picture that's always ongoing here. So as I said, DA organisations very much look at the removal of overheads, but they partner that with automation. They all work around SaaS models, which we see SaaS everywhere we go now, which is obviously means software as a service, whereas Mutable very much pulls in services with software, so it's got a much more people focus, and that's kind of where all of our research and learnings are headed to. We wanted to protect people while still being able to create more agile functioning businesses where overheads moved in a different way in terms of people working for outcome versus being completely removed from the business. So that's kind of where we are. We've had to do a lot of work with the employees we work with, but we're already looking at different programs like shared workforce and outcome-based working when we're talking to our companies. And like I said, the appetite there is there for people to work to outcome.
Our last speaker is Kate Bravery. Kate's a partner and global practice leader for Mercer's career business. Her role involves strategizing growth opportunities for human capital consulting, bringing new products to market and supporting business professional practice.
Great, well, thank you. First up, wow, what a wealth of knowledge we have accumulated over the last 2 years. I also have a number of questions stemming out of it. Just so interesting to see how broad and diverse the conversation has gone. Something that I wanted to highlight today is the work that we've been partnering with the World Economic Forum on, which is the Good Work Alliance. The Good Work Alliance came out of 60 CHROs that have been partnering over the last 2 years to look at how has the future work agenda been reset given what we've all experienced. And from that, a group of individuals and leading companies set about to design a framework which could guide the future of work so that it can be all the things we've been talking about, flexible, inclusive, and fair for all. It was actually released at Davos just last month, and we've already got 14 leading organizations that have signed up to this framework. The framework essentially has 5 pillars. The first one is around a living wage and social justice. The second one is flexibility and protection. The third one is well-being. The fourth one is around total well-being strategies, and also ensuring that we have employability, which very much goes back to some of the comments right at the very beginning, and a learning culture, as well as D&I think everyone has touched on. But this second pillar around flexibility and protection, I just wanted to drill down a bit today to share some more comments on. In my role at Mercer, I also had the opportunity to do our global talent trends study, which is a accumulation of 11,000 voices every year, looking at what's changing around the future of work. And when I looked at that data, which has influenced what we put into the Good Work framework, 2 things really stood out for the UK. The first one was we really can't separate the agenda of being exhausted and burnout that many of you have brought up from the future of work and flexible working. Out of the 16 countries that we look at in this study, the UK had the lowest energy levels coming into this year, with 77% of workers feeling they are at risk of burnout. Now, those reasons for those burnout are diverse. They look different for knowledge workers, frontline workers, men and women. They're all grappling with different times. You've all highlighted that. But that is influencing their thinking about flexible work. Because we also asked them, if you forego a pay rise this year, what would you trade? Very topical given, I think, the conversations around cost of living. And in the UK, out of 20 options, the first 4 were a blend of flexible working and time off. So yes, they wanted the compressed work week and flexible working. Yes, they wanted the option to work anywhere, but they also, number 3, wanted to have unlimited leave and also an extra week's paid vacation. So I think particularly in this market, the two are really highly entwined, and therefore it's very difficult to have a conversation, I think, just on flexible working. It's that psychological way of being exhausted and burnt out, as we've all talked about, really is there. I think, I'm not sure which of the speakers mentioned a knee-jerk reaction. At Mercer, we have been working on flexible working with clients around the world long before the pandemic hit. But what we are seeing is that some of the more directed strategies are actually expanding some of the pay equity gaps we see, the career equity challenges, and health equity challenges. So we really do need to make sure that we are not just building it back flexibly, but also fairly. The second thing I wanted to highlight about the UK market, you see it globally, but it's very acute here, is that executives and employees have very different views about what the future of work looks like. Let me give you some figures. 75% of executives in the UK said essentially we have an apprenticeship model where people learn and work together side by side, not remote. And that's feeding into their perceptions around our culture will be eroded if people don't come back into the workplace or work site setting. 79% of them are deeply worried that if people don't have time together, they won't build those social connections that have been the fabric of how we've actually got through this period. Employees in the UK see it quite differently. 71% believe that their teams actually have collaborated really well when some are on site and some are remotely. 68% believe the company is actually more successful and better prepared to weather the flexibility needs stemming from inflation or a potential recession with a hybrid work model. And 62% said, if remote working or a flexible option is taken off the table, I'm not coming back into the workplace. And I think we see that when we look at the trends with LinkedIn. You know, the amount of job applicants that are being opened if they are remote working really surpasses the amount of remote working jobs that are out there. So, you know, regardless of where employers are sitting are, the reality is employees are speaking their feet. And I think I mentioned to you, we've got a live study at the moment on flexible working practices globally. It hasn't closed yet, but I looked this morning at the UK and Irish data. It's fascinating. The pain point is 1 in 3 organisations say they have serious talent gaps that they need to fill, which is driving this focus on what employees really want to bring them back emotionally, not just physically. But there are also some other pieces that I thought was worth pulling out. 60% of people say we are already returned to the workplace, 70 globally, but only half reported that their employees were fully happy with the new arrangements, and only 25% says that their workers have fully adopted the new way of working. We've still got a long way to go in making sure that we're meeting what employees really want. And one of the points that came out of our study that both HR and executives echoed is when we are returned to work, they are worried that managers will be incentivized to move people who elect to be fully remote onto a contingent or independent workplace. So what is our research showing really makes a difference? Well, a couple of things. We looked at those organizations that were growing faster than their peers, so more than 10% revenue growth. They're absolutely increasing their investment in AI and automation, not just to transform jobs, but also to understand worker preferences with flexible working and to engage in internal talent marketplaces, which I think give a lot of those benefits around contingent workers that you were talking about outcomes. Secondly, they're making sure that health and well-being and training are an essential part of those new work models, and being very transparent about where their position is on topics such as 4-day work week, and which jobs can viably be done in a remote or a hybrid way, empowering individuals to make those choices. I think this is an incredibly exciting time. We've got a great opportunity ahead of us. I think we have some unique challenges here in the workforce with the UK. But when we did ask people what would bring them back into the workplace, they did say clearer direction about what the future work looks like and what I need to do to make sure that I remain employable and can stay in the workplace. And so my last comment, which is echoed in the Good Work Alliance framework, is we can't look at flexible working in isolation. We have to look at protection, particularly for contingent workers, and we have to make sure that health and well-being and upskilling and reskilling are part of that agenda. So as we get more flexibility, we use that flexibility to keep people employable and keep them in the workplace for longer. It's going to be critical for making sure we make progress on the health and wealth protection gap that we see some worrying statistics.